Alright, back at the Falcon. Got the carburetor bracket today in the house, so we're going to be throwing this on the TV cable. Got the shock extenders, however, the ones that I have are different than the new shocks that I have. The new shocks are standard thread. Old shocks were fine thread, so I ordered fine thread thinking that was standard. It was not. So I'm going to lay you out, get this hooked up today. I'm going to have to trim that bracket down a little bit more and go from there. Alright, I didn't do a full video on how to set this up. If we go on the inside of the car, at idle and neutral, we are sitting at 0 volts, little throttle, still 0 volts, that's barely any throttle right now, goes up, or 0 psi. If we lay into the throttle, 30, and that's about, that sounds way louder than it is, it's about half. A little under half, that's about a quarter throttle. But now we have the right geometry. It's actually going up like it's supposed to and working like it should. On the voltmeter, having some charging issues. It's staying at about 9 volts. I know the battery's not completely full, but under load, kit. This is a spacer. At idle and neutral, we're at 0. There's the spacer in place, basically at the end of the barrel clamp. Come around in here, a little high at 41, but that's also rubbing on the fuel line. If I adjust that so it's not hitting the fuel line, we're right at 38. Right where you want it, so that's fixed. And on the alternator, the issue I was running into wasn't charging, left the battery dead yesterday. Put it in a charger overnight. It is working now. The volt gauge, I just realized I did this. Volt gauge is reading about 9 volts right now. I wired it wrong. Instead of going straight to the battery, it is hooked up to the starter solenoid. So here's the signal wire for the gauge. This needs to go straight to the battery. If I put a voltmeter on it and idle here, we're at 13.7. The only thing I changed, this is the good regular, or this regulator I found in the trunk. Instead of taking the one off of the firewall here, or the shock tower, I took the extra one that I found in the trunk, hooked it up, it didn't work. Here's the new regulator that I had on there before I painted it. Hooked this up, everything's charging, that's good now too. Alright, so we didn't get nearly as much done as I wanted to, but we got the Falcon back up in the lift. Fixed the TV cable, that is good to go. Pressure goes up as soon as I tap the throttle. All that I needed, and it's hard to see in the video, I meant to take a full one, but working on the car at the shop versus working at the car at home, at the house, it's just me, I can do whatever I want. Up here, we have a compressor going all day. Customers coming in and out, it's a pain in the ass. I try not to do that. Maybe at some point we might start a new channel for that one, just all the powder coating stuff, because it's fun. There's always something new and exciting. All this Harley stuff sitting over here right now. Stupid wheels, headers, ceramic coating, gym equipment, never ends. Regardless, here's where we ended up. Hooked up the TV cable. I don't have the actual bracket, but this right here is the Holley equivalent. I ordered 2, overpaid, $30 for this and a couple of nuts and bolts. But it is what it is. I don't want to mess around with it. At this point, my time is worth more than the cost of parts to some extent. But if you notice, you got 2 holes on this bracket. It's the same on the Edelbrock. It's just the geometry is slightly different, maybe. I actually didn't hold them up to each other, so if they're the same, then I am an idiot. Which it wouldn't be the first time I've heard that, but you got a round hole at the top, oval hole at the bottom. What this does, this gets mounted onto your throttle linkage on the carburetor like so. This upper one is going to get mounted to the bracket on the carburetor. Your throttle adapter or ball or little sleeve, whatever you use. I'm using a cable on this one, so let's say cable. I have the throttle pin with the cable that slides over the pin and then gets cotter pinned on mine. If you have a throttle rod or a linkage, it's most likely going to be a ball. This goes at the top of the carb, right where the throttle normally goes. This bottom one goes on the hook that most people use for a detent or a return spring. In my case, I have the return springs on a separate bracket because I bought that fancy, super fancy Amazon cheapo Chinese bracket. That gets mounted through here. I don't use this bottom hole, but I did hook the TV up to a separate linkage, which is just like the one in the bag right there. Little clip style for the low car cable. That would go through this bottom hole. However, the geometry correction bracket moves that forward roughly an inch. I didn't actually mic it out or measure. I probably will, so I can start making my own of those because I have a ton of miscellaneous parts, but moves the geometry forward. When I had this working before, I drove it, it was fine. Did not actually work all that well. Would work if it was cold and I did a drive. Would work if it was warm and I readjusted the cable. In between was a terrible spot. Didn't do anything. So basically I hooked up the new bracket on the carb. I didn't film it because it was loud and I didn't have a mic working. Whatever. Hate me if you want. If you want a specific video on how to mount a bracket to your carburetor linkage, let me know. I will make one for you. But put the bracket on, put the cable on, adjusted the TV pressure with the gauge tool, the little spacer block that's in the TV cable video. Hooked that up, put it together, and set it to 38 pounds. 38 pounds, stays steady, pull the block out, drops back down to 0, exactly like it should. Quarter throttle, I'm about 12, 15, 20. Half throttle, it's getting up there, 30, 35-ish. Outside of that, I still have glass packs on this. It's sitting on the stand. I don't like preloading a motor and revving it out like crazy, especially a brand new motor that has not that many miles on it. So I stopped there, but it continued to go up with the accelerator pressure. The higher the throttle got, the higher the trans pressure gauge got. And that gauge is gonna stay in the car indefinitely. I'm not trying to use it temporarily. It will stay in there forever. Same thing with the alternator. The charging system took a crap on me. I tried starting it yesterday, 2 days ago when I was working on this. Cranked it over, didn't start, battery was dead. So I bought a charger. I have a million chargers. I just don't have a fast enough one for a car battery. I'm used to doing bike stuff. But put a charger on it, let it charge over this morning. I came up here at about 5 o'clock in the morning today. Plugged it in. It was at 3/4 of the way charged, enough to crank it over and start it. I also switched out the voltage regulator box. I found one in the trunk. I didn't want to flip-flop them. Put the old regulator box, old as in brand new, that I bought right when I was getting ready to start the car. Moved that one over. It seems to be charging way better again, so I did just have a bad box. Even though it looked brand new, it did not actually work. So I flip-flopped those, fired the car up, looked at the gauge. It's still at 8 volts on the voltmeter that I got hooked up. I'm like, why is there only 8 volts? I put a voltmeter on it. Goes up to 13 and a half at idle. I messed something up. The gauge is wrong. I looked. For whatever reason, I ran the voltmeter gauge to the starter solenoid. So I'm getting 4 volts less through the solenoid as opposed to direct battery. So the alternator's fixed. Awesome. Don't have to worry about that. Don't have to flip-flop anything. Alternator's fixed. Exhaust is done. And it's dark over here now, but don't mind the crooked pipes. Here we are. I got you guys flush against the rear end. Like I said, I'm happy with the driver's side. This could stay. Or passenger side, rather. I'm happy with the passenger side. This could stay. This one's still pitched down. However, that's also like 10 degrees less of an angle than it was. It didn't scrape. Far from perfect. Nowhere near done. I have a set of long tube headers that were in the motor trans install video. Those are going on here. I just need the time to be able to start banging them with the hammer, torching them, making things fit the way I want them to fit, as opposed to how the Summit box says that they won't work. We'll make them fit one way or another. Cross members welded in underneath. Then we moved on to the rear end. I said I was waiting on parts for the shocks. Here is where we're currently at. The car's up on the lift. It's jacked up on the body, so the suspension here is completely unsprung. With unsprung suspension, obviously when you put this down the ground, it's going to come up and put some weight on the leaf springs. Right now, completely unloaded. If we come around to the front side of this, and hopefully you can see in front of me, here's our leaf spring perch and shock mount right here. Here's the shock mount, and here is the shock. We have about a 3-inch gap between where the shock and the actual mount. My mount's down here. Here's the mount. Here's the bottom of the shock. Huge gap. I need longer shocks. I'm having a really hard time finding a factory-ish. I want these exact shocks for 3 inches longer. If anybody knows how to go about or how to order proper length shocks, these are KYB Excel Gs. I don't have a part number. I don't know. I have shock extensions that are supposed to thread on to this. So that thread extensions basically thread on. I don't know if they go on the bottom or the top. I'm not an off-road guy. I think that's more popular there. But I have little extensions that will thread onto the bottom of the shock, give me more meat, and then I basically move the bushings and all that other stuff. But then I'm sitting here with a 3/8 rod holding the entire rear end of this car up. I don't like that. I don't love it. It was a $15 quick fix. We're going to try it. If it catastrophically fails, I will let you know and tell you never to try that. I'm willing to take that risk, so thank me later down the line. But that's where we're at. I'm also sitting here on the shackles. We are at the longest extended point. These are not going to stay here that long. The leaf springs, it was $100 for a set of 67 Mustang leaf springs that were brand new. If those stay on for a little while, cool. But again, this car, I am really, really hoping if I can do everything in my power, I want to get this to the track as soon as possible. However it sits currently. I'm not looking to set any records. I don't expect anything, but I have zero baseline with this. Motor's super healthy. We've got 15 miles maybe on this motor. I don't care. I just want to, ideally, if I could choose, and I know the weather turned to crap today, if I could choose, I want to get this to the track. I want to run a pass. I want to get a baseline time, and then I can start playing around with a bunch of fun stuff and have a baseline number where, hey, I did this and this had this translation, or, oh, I put CalTrax in and picked up X amount of time. I don't have a reference. I don't have a baseline. Trying to work on that. Realist part of me, that's probably going to be an early spring thing. If I can get this running, driving, where I can drive it back and forth for a little bit, just make sure the motor's broken in and everything's done, then come spring, we're going to pull it out and do a big old nasty burnout and beat the living piss out of it and see what breaks and then fix it from there. So kind of leaving off there. That's the other part. Spend some time looking at those CalTrax designs. I can build one. I will 100% be building a custom traction bar setup for this soon. I also want to do some frame connectors on this. Temporary exhaust, looks like dog crap, welds are crap. It is not at all anything I'm proud of, but it will work to get us back and forth. Turn signal wise, lights wise, everything else is still functioning, but that's where we're at. Like, comment, subscribe, follow along with the build progress. We're up on the lift now, so now we get to start tinkering as opposed to trying to get working. Completely different ballgame. If you don't know what that means, get in the garage, start building stuff. You will quickly understand. Running, driving, alterations are completely different than trying to build a car from scratch, since I had no motor, no trans, no drive shaft, no anything with this car when I bought it. Thanks for watching. Catch you guys later.